I think we're live. Always give it a couple of seconds for YouTube to do its thing. And I think, yeah, we're there. We're here. No one's in the chat room at the minute, so I'm literally just talking to myself, which is fine because I spend most of my life talking to myself. But if you're watching this in the future, or we have people arriving, awesome. Or if you're watching it live, thank you very much. As always, the first thing to say is if you haven't checked out the Substack newsletter list, it's in the description below. Every Friday, I send out I suppose it's like a written version of these videos. So it's me musing about something about this industry. And you can sign up for free. You can remove yourself from the list if you don't enjoy them. No hard feelings, obviously. But yeah, check it out. And also, if you enjoyed this video, by the time you've finished watching it, a little thumbs up doesn't start again. A little thumbs up always goes a long way, as does a subscribe. This is a new channel. It's growing right from the bottom of the tree, if you like. I don't know what that means. It's been a long week. But yeah, it's anything you can do to support this channel is massively appreciated. And I'm loving building it, actually. It's great being at the bottom of the rung of the ladder again, and starting something completely fresh. It really gets your mind whirring. So as always, the purpose of these live streams is twofold. So the first thing is to share something with you. So to share something about this business, which I think, or I hope anyway, you'll find interesting. And then the second thing is to get questions from the people who are joining me live, who are slowly starting to filter in. I'll take any questions within reason, obviously. The only thing I do always say is this isn't a tech channel, so any tech questions, if you can send them to me via the Mark Ellis Reviews channel, that's great. But everything else is game, it's fair game. So anything about this business, anything about the content creator industry in general, hit me with it. You can't embarrass me, and you can't. There's no such thing as a stupid question. So stick them as you go, as they come up in the live chat window. The thing that I want to talk about today, I have to be really careful about, given the nature of the topic, for reasons that will become clear in a moment. But I want to talk about it because it's something which, certainly as the Mark Ellis Reviews business grows, I'm getting more exposure to, and it's absolutely fascinating. And it's product. I told you it'd been a long week. It's product embargoes. Which, if you're not aware, excuse me, if you're not aware, an embargo is a date that a brand puts on the release of information about a product. It doesn't necessarily relate to the launch of the product or the time that people will get the product in their hands. It's normally the launch, so it's the announcement of the product. And if you work in the press, or if you're an influencer like me, hate that phrase, but if you're a YouTuber, content creator, let's use that one instead. You can be brought into those embargo periods. So basically, you're brought in before the product launch, and you're given you're given access to it, or you're sent somewhere to check it out. You get hands-on time with it, and you're sworn to secrecy. So you can't say anything about it until a certain date, which is known as the embargo date. And it's all very exciting. And these things, in my experience anyway, are that they're very much invite only. You can't invite yourself in or request to be in a part of a product embargo, because you never know when they're going to happen. They're completely random as far as we're concerned. They're not random for these brands and for these companies. Obviously, they plan them in advance. But as far as we're concerned, we have no idea when they're going to happen. So you can't think, well, I want to be in that embargo. Let's contact X brand and try and get into it. It doesn't work like that at all. Equally, you just have to kind of wait for them to come along. There's two ways this can happen. Either you just get an email completely out of the blue from brand X, or from an agency, like a PR agency that is representing that brand, comes to you out of the blue, and happy days. Again, you can't predict those. They're very unpredictable, quite rare as well, as you can imagine. The other way of getting into these embargo lists is to pal up, if you like, with other creators. So with your peers, basically. Do a bit of networking. Go on Twitter, Be very, present on those social networks, make friends with people. If you get invited to events, there may not be embargo events, but if you get invited to industry events, or if you've perhaps there's a conference or something happening that you think looks interesting, go to it, make friends with people, and more importantly, make friends with people who are several steps ahead of you. So if you're running a YouTube channel or a podcast or something like that, find people who are at least 2 or 3 years ahead, because they have the contacts, they have the knowledge, they have the experience of working with these brands. And quite often, in fact, in my experience, they always share what they can. And sometimes, though, that share comes in the form of a very good contact at a brand, which can in turn get you into embargo lists. Excuse me, let me have a quick drink. Hello, everyone. We do have some people coming in, which is fantastic. Some familiar faces, as always, which I love. My voice is going at the moment because I've been doing a lot of video making this week, so you'll have to bear with me. So that's basically how these embargo things come around, and they're always exciting. But what I wanted to give you an insight into today is just how much work is involved, because it's frightening. Now, I've had several embargo experiences so far. So I've worked with Beats, I've worked with Google, Panasonic, Oppo, Shocks, and several others. So some smaller brands as well. And each of those has been great. I've really enjoyed doing it. It's very much been a baptism of fire quite often, because you're not taught how to do this. There's no embargo list manual. You just have to kind of make it up as you go along, or speak to people again who are experienced in it. But the most recent one that I want to talk about, and probably not the biggest, because there's some very big brands that I've just mentioned, but certainly the most complex, really, in terms of content production, was Samsung. And I can talk about this because it's all happened. The embargo lifted earlier this week, so I'm not in danger. I still have to be careful about how much I share, but I can tell you as much as I can. So if you're not aware, Samsung had a very big launch this week. It was called Unpacked, is what they call it every year. And it's basically them launching their brand new range of flippable and foldable phones, along with new watches and new tablets. So you're talking several new products with different iterations of those products within each bracket. It's a lot of stuff, basically. So they're literally on Wednesday, they did their Unpacked live stream from from South Korea, and beamed it around the world, introduced these products. Not pre-launched. They they basically made them available for pre-order, and you can buy them now. You can pre-order them, and they arrive. Several weeks ago, and I think I mentioned this possibly in the last live stream. I certainly did in a newsletter recently. But a few weeks ago, I made friends with a very good, very experienced YouTuber, a guy who I won't mention on this live stream because it's not fair. He'll get loads of requests for friendships as well, I'm sure, as a result of that. So I won't do that. I won't put him in that position. But a very experienced guy on YouTube who's been doing it a lot longer than me and gets invited to most of these big events. He gave me a very good contact at Samsung, again, who I won't mention. And to cut a long story short, I got in touch with that contact. They very quickly got back to me and said, look, yeah, we'd love to invite you along to a hands-on demonstration of these new products. And the first thing you do is sign an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, which I'm sure you're all aware of. And these NDAs vary based on the brand that you're working with in terms of how many pages they are and the kind of language that's used. But they all basically say the same thing, which is don't let the cat out of the bag. If you sign this, that's it. You're working with us behind closed doors. Whatever you do on pain, not on pain of death, but certainly don't let anyone know about this stuff until this date. And I would guess if you did break that embargo, one, you'd never work with that brand again, ever, and two, there might be legal implications. It's a really big deal. If I kind of made note of the fact that I'd been playing with the Flip 5 and revealed 3 of its biggest features before Wednesday, I dread to think what would have happened to me in my business in terms of legal action, all that sort of stuff. And quite rightly, I've signed something. I've signed a thing that says I'm not going to do that. So it's really serious stuff. And And with Samsung, it kind of fell into two two events that I got access to. So the first one was a press briefing and hands-on, and this is fascinating. This is when you're kind of taken somewhere, or you go somewhere. In this case, it was London, and you kind of enter a room, and the first thing you get is a press briefing. So these people welcome you in and have a great big screen behind them and show you the new product, talk about it, talk through its key features and the new stuff, the new updates, the things that they're focusing on from a marketing perspective, etc. That lasts for about an hour. And then you're thrown in very nicely into this hands-on area. And if you've ever seen behind the scenes of the Apple events, where you see people walking around Apple Park and the Steve Jobs Theatre, trying the new iPhones, and there's all these people hustling around trying to get footage of these new devices, it's exactly like that. So this was like the Samsung UK version of that, basically. So you're thrown into this room, lovely room full of new devices everywhere and nice lighting, nice kind of settings where you can get your footage. And that's the idea. The idea is that you go in there and get as much B-roll footage as you can of these devices. And I'd never done this before, because every other excuse me, every other embargoed product that I've worked on, it's normally been sent to me, so I can actually, in the comfort of my own studio with my own time, I can get on with it and film things as I'm comfortable filming them without being rushed. Whereas these events, you're not rushed, but you're given a deadline, which is about an hour. We had about an hour to film this stuff, and I listed the product. I listed the products earlier: Flip 5, Fold 5, Watch 6, Watch 6 Classic, 3 new tablets. I think in total it's about 7 new products that we had access to for an hour, and I absolutely loved it. It was really exhilarating. I spent most of the time wondering if I'd filmed enough stuff, if any of the stuff I'd shot was of any use, and more importantly, what on earth I was going to do with it. Because again, 7 products. What kind of video do you make from that? Do you do an overview of everything? Do you pick one product in particular? Do you do a couple of them? Do you do a comparison with other competing brands? I'd never done this before, so it really tested my ability to come up with content ideas very quickly, which thankfully I'm quite good at. So yeah, that was the hands-on experience, and that happened a week before the embargo lifted. So we then had a week basically to do with that footage as we pleased behind closed doors to get content ready in line for the embargo. And I did that. I created if you've not seen it yet, it's on the Mark Ellis Reviews channel. I created an overview video of all of those products. And thankfully, the footage that I shot on that hands-on day was fine. That was my big worry, that I didn't have enough of it. Again, with hindsight and with a bit more experience under my belt now, I've realized that I probably should have focused on certain things a little bit more possibly. But again, it was a new thing for me. But I put together this overview video, and it was nice to have time to do that, not to kind of rush it. And I got that finished 3 or 4 days before the embargo date, scheduled it, done, happy. The challenge then was all the other content that needed creating for this, and it wasn't just by me. So as I think I've mentioned before on these live streams, I do have a small team of people that do certain things for me. And this was a case of bringing them in to work on embargoed content, which they hadn't done before. And these people operate externally, so there's lots of trust involved with this. I do trust them implicitly, and they're very good at what they do. So that wasn't an issue, but coordinating everything was. So I'd created that main video. I'd also written a blog post. So if you know me, you know that most videos that I make start life as blog posts. So if there's a review of something on the YouTube channel, there's almost definitely a corresponding blog post on my website on markellisreviews.com. So alongside that video, I'd written the blog post and given that to my publishing guy, who basically configures the post in WordPress, gets it ready for publishing, and in normal circumstances, hits publish. I don't worry about it. It just goes out, done. Obviously, he couldn't do that last week, because if he had done that, then, end of Mark Ellis Reviews, basically. So I had to make sure he was aware that this was an embargoed blog post. It could not go live until after X date at X time, very, very specific. And he did that, which was fantastic. That was one element. The other element was all of the short form stuff. So what I've been doing for quite a while now is once I've made the long form YouTube video, I send that to my short form video editor, and he chops it up. But based on my instructions for certain timestamps, he creates, let's say, 4 or 5 shorts from that longer form video. And obviously, I wanted him to do the exact same thing with this Samsung stuff. And these are obviously vertical videos, so he converts it to vertical format, and it does some clever stuff to make it work, and puts captions on it as well. And as I say, I wanted the exact same thing, obviously, for this Samsung stuff. So I gave that to him. He had to be very careful with the file that he was using. It was a bit of a mission impossible. This will explode in 10 seconds if you don't do anything with it. And that's not how it works, but you know what I mean. And he created those shorts. They were sent back to me. I then gave those shorts to my VA, who does all of the scheduling for short form content. And again, normally he would just schedule them tomorrow or even publish them straight away when he gets them. Once again, he couldn't do that because this was all happening last week when the embargo was still very much a locked door. So he had to be instructed to schedule everything on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube Shorts very tightly, very specifically after that embargo date. Please do not publish it before then. It has to be after that date and that time, which again, he did perfectly, no issues whatsoever. Then there was the case of short form content for Instagram and Twitter. And this is written stuff. So for Instagram, alongside those reels, I normally do some standard posts, and these are just standard, still image posts with some text in it, some hashtags and stuff. All of those had to be written for each product and then scheduled again to go live after the embargo date. Same thing with the tweets. They needed to be written and scheduled to go live after the embargo date. If you're tired listening to this, trust me, it was, you can imagine what it was like scheduling all this stuff and kind of managing it. And then on the day, because you can't schedule this, as far as I'm aware, once the embargo had lifted, all of that Instagram content had to be shared to stories, as in Instagram stories, and Samsung tagged, the right hashtags used, etc., etc. So all in all, an awful lot of work, and I didn't realize quite how much work was involved. In fact, I had an inkling, but like anything in life, until you do it yourself, you have no idea how much work's involved. And also that constant worry that something's going to go wrong. Someone's going to forget that there's an embargo, or the scheduling might go wrong. Let's say YouTube scheduling for some reason breaks and does it 5 minutes before, and it goes out, at 10 to 12 rather than 12 o'clock. All those things play into the worry about this. But it all went by absolutely perfectly. There were no mess ups, no technical glitches at all. All of the content went out online. All the content went out on time, and everyone was utterly fantastic with their respective jobs. But it was a real military operation in terms of getting all that stuff together. Ironically, the video, the long form video of this, is one of the worst performing videos I've had in recent weeks. In fact, probably in recent months, actually, on the YouTube channel. I'm not entirely sure why. I think there's a couple of things I can learn from that. I think 2 mistakes I probably made. One of them was the thumbnail, which was rushed. And the reason the thumbnail was rushed was because it was at the back of my mind during that hands-on time. Normally, my thumbnails are shot in here. So again, all controlled, all under my control. I do them when I want to. I can get them exactly how I want them to be. I can't really do that on site somewhere. So, I was on my own on the hands-on thing. So I was having to prop the camera up in different places. I didn't take a tripod either. Immediately, we went into this hands-on area, and everyone else had a tripod. And I remember thinking, why has everyone got a tripod? And then it became very clear why they've got a tripod, because a bit like me, they're on their own and they need to put the camera on something. So I was kind of putting the camera on ledges and things, and at the last minute trying to get some sort of thumbnail going. And as a result, the thumbnail, I swapped it out 2 or 3 times, and it's not great. The second thing is that I think it was a mistake to cover every product in that review, because again, looking at the more experienced YouTubers who were there and who've been doing this for a long time, they either focused on one product or a couple of products, or compared one of the products, for instance, the Fold 5, to an existing competing product. Whereas I kind of did this overall overarching video of everything, all 7 products. This is what they're all about. And I'm kind of going against my own advice with that, because I'm confusing the audience. I'm confusing the algorithm. What is this video about? Is it about smartwatches, tablets, phones? So I think I made a few mistakes there, which I'll learn from. I don't regret any of those mistakes, because this was brand new. I didn't know what I was doing with a lot of this stuff, and like anything in life, anything in business, you learn from those mistakes you make. But the key thing was, I got in with Samsung. Hopefully, that means I'll have a good partnership with them going forward. And again, I learned so much stuff during that hands-on day, and the watch party thing that I went to. So this was the second part of this. On Wednesday was that I was at the watch party. So I wasn't in South Korea. That would have been fantastic. But instead, I was in London watching the basically a stream of that South Korean presentation in one of Samsung's places, with loads of Samsung bigwigs, other press people, and lots of other kind of special guests that had been invited. And that was an incredible experience, great for networking. And yeah, it was again. I didn't know what I was doing. I was a fish out of water, really. But I know what I need to do next time, which is the main thing. But that I just thought that might be interesting in terms of how much work goes into this stuff. Because from an outsider's perspective, if you're a viewer, if you're someone who's subscribed to my channel, that video will just pop up. That Samsung overview of those 7 products will have popped up into your feed on Wednesday afternoon. You might have watched it, you might have passed by, whatever, but you won't have realised what went into making that, and all of the other content, that kind of underbelly of content beneath the main video, which is all kind of coming out at the same time. It's really mind blowing, actually. So yeah, I thought that might be interesting. The aftermath with this as well is also quite fascinating, because I don't have any of those review units at the moment. So the only hands-on time I've had with those Samsung products was during that hands-on event last week, and because I've kind of snuck in at the back via the back entrance with this at the last minute as a newbie in terms of a Samsung. A kind of influencer relationship with Samsung. They have what's called a seeding program, which is where the review units are distributed ahead of time, or they're kind of allocated to different press, media, YouTubers, etc. I'm kind of coming at the back going, can I have one, please? And it's a bit late. So I will get something, and it will happen at some stage, but I don't know when. And I've got no issue with that at all, because, like I say, I was in at the last minute. I can't complain that I don't have these review units. I do have stuff on the way. I've pre-ordered certain products which from that event, which I want to feature on the channel. But yeah, that's one thing where all that kind of excitement of getting the hands on and being at the watch party, and then realizing that, okay, I haven't got any review units, and people are already getting their reviews out because they do have the review units. So that's been interesting. And also with the other thing with these kind of partner relationships, really, that you have with these brands, you never know how long they're going to last. You never know if your contact is going to still be there in 3 weeks' time, or you never know if you might just get forgotten about, or they might potentially change their strategy and start working with different people. So I think, like I said right at the start of this conversation, at the very start of this video, it's just a case of waiting, being patient, occasionally checking in with them and saying, "Look, how are things going?" And reminding them that you exist. But just being patient, like everything in this business, whether it be growing a YouTube channel and growing an audience, or establishing sponsor partnerships, or in this case, partnerships with brands to get into the embargo list. You can't force any of it. It has to happen, and it will only happen if you put yourself in the right place at the right time and just be consistent. So it's all the same stuff, really, which is nice, because it's a very consistent way to approach the business. So that was it, guys. In terms of my waffle, I hope that was interesting. Hopefully it sparked a few questions. I desperately need to have a drink of water. And it looks like you're all starting to say where you're calling in from, which is, I love this part, because it's so nice to see the wide range of countries that are tuning into this little YouTube channel. It's amazing. So we've got Florida. some very recognizable people on this list, and places as well. Edinburgh, Abu Dhabi, Northern Ireland, Thailand. I went to Thailand years ago, many years ago, probably about 10 years ago. I want to go back quite desperately. Yeah, hit me with your questions, please, guys. Anything about what I've talked about in terms of the embargo process, working with brands, sponsors. I'll tell you as much as I can. There are certain things I can't reveal, obviously, but I will tell you as much as I'm kind of willing to. We have a question. Isn't it better to review a product independently rather than being a partner of a brand? I agree with that to a degree. I suppose this is one of the challenges of being a tech YouTuber. I don't know if it's the same in other niches. It's certainly the case in YouTube, which is that it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because if you review things independently, and I absolutely do that still. Funnily enough, I've been reviewing the Nothing Phone 2, which I'm pointing over there because it's over there. That review is coming out on Monday. And this is long after a lot of other people have reviewed that phone. The reason for that is because I have no relationship with Nothing, so I can't get my hands on that phone until I pre-order it myself. Is that an issue? Not massively, but the kind of double-edged sword comes from the fact that to get the most views and to be recognized by the audience en masse and bring more people in terms of subscribers, you need early access to those products. It's just the way that the algorithm works, particularly with phones. When it comes to smartphones, they have very sharp kind of interest graphs. So when a new iPhone is launched, for instance, sky high, immediately millions and millions and millions of people are interested, and then 2 weeks later it kind of drops off a bit. And if you're a reviewer and you're kind of sneaking in after 2 weeks because you've had to wait for the delivery and you've missed the delivery at home, or you ordered the wrong one, or whatever it might be, if you kind of sneak in 2 or 3 weeks afterwards, when that interest graph is really kind of tanking, you're not going to get as many views. You're not going to get as many people watching that content. And everything in this business is about views. It's getting people to watch, and hopefully converting some of them into subscribers. So I agree. This is a very partnership is probably the wrong. I keep using that word. It's probably the wrong term for it. It's more of a relationship, really. Again, not a huge difference between the two. It's nothing like a sponsorship agreement. So a sponsorship agreement is that you get paid by a sponsor to show their show their product and talk about it. You're not paid to have an opinion they give you. You still deliver your own opinion on the product, but you are paid. You're being there's money coming into your bank account from the company behind that product. This isn't the case with what I've done with Samsung. There's no paid element to this at all. It's just a case of them inviting me to something to show me something, and I can say whatever I like about those products. I'm very honest about them. Any product I review, I'm always honest about. And these event invites would never change my opinion of a product at all. For instance, the Fold 5, when I eventually review it, whenever that will be, I will be incredibly honest about the fact that I think it's not as good a product as the Pixel Fold. I think the Pixel Fold from Google is a better foldable phone because it has a proper front screen that you can use. So those kind of things don't influence me at all. But I know why you're asking that question. But it's all about getting early access to products, because that is so valuable from a content creation perspective and growing your audience. Excuse me. Another question from Mike. Hi, Mike. A regular. When you were working for yourself after being employed, how did you manage your time effectively? How did I manage my time effectively? I'm pretty good with this. How do I manage it, though? I think when you think about this stuff, it's hard to define how you manage your time, if that makes sense. I invest quite a bit of my energy in work, I don't like this phrase, but deep work. To me, it's just working. It's just working, really. But it's known as deep work, where you really switch off from everything around you and just focus on whatever it is you're doing. I've found that doing that means that I can tackle whatever it is, whether it be a blog post or a video edit or even, filming A-roll and stuff. Even now, really, this is kind of deep work because I'm not focusing on anything else. My phone, I'm not looking at. I'm not thinking about what's going on outside there. I'm just completely focused on you guys and talking about this stuff. I found that the combination of that and having a strict to-do list each day, and the fact that when you work for yourself, if you don't work, you don't get paid. Whereas if you're working for an employer, you still should be doing the job. But if you go slack off a little bit for half a day and go and play some golf with your mates because you've been invited by the director to do that, you'll still get paid. If I do that now, I will lose out on certain portions of revenue, and that's always been the case, even when I was freelancing as well, because you're literally being paid by the hour to do stuff. So I think the combination of deep work, for want of a better phrase, a very strict to-do list, and knowledge that if you're not working, you're not earning, combined meant really that I had no issue. I've never had an issue managing my time because of those three elements. I think that's what it is. It's hard it's a great question, but it's very hard to kind of work out exactly how you're doing it. Hopefully that made some sort of sense. What's your go-to tool for scheduling social posts for upcoming and released videos? So obviously for videos, in terms of YouTube, it's just YouTube Studio. You just schedule the video within there. In terms of social stuff, I don't do it. So I don't schedule tweets really. I think I said earlier that I scheduled the tweets for the Samsung thing. I didn't actually, because I'm not using a social scheduling tool for that. I just wrote the post and saved it as a draft, and then did some more posts on the day, basically. In terms of Instagram and TikTok, that's all done by my VA. I don't think he uses a scheduling platform. I think he just uses the built-in scheduling on both of those platforms, which works fine. There's not a lot of content that is pre-scheduled, really, so it's not a big deal. But in the past, I've used Hootsuite, I've used Buffer, I've also used what was it called? Taplio for LinkedIn, and Tweet Hunter, I think it was called for Twitter, or X now as it's known. But I don't. Apart from that, Johan, I don't do a huge amount of scheduling apart from that. He is always working. We ask his girlfriend. Yeah, Jen, bless her. I think I've talked about. Someone asked a brilliant question. Apologies if you're on here and I can't remember who you are, but someone asked a fantastic question about. I think it was something to do with a few weeks ago about how do you switch off, how do you stop, and I've always struggled with this actually in the past. But the one big thing, and other parents on here will know exactly what I'm talking about. The one thing that does make you stop is your kids. I've got a very young son. He's only just turned 1. And again, I think I was talking about this last week, actually. I know that as soon as the clock hits 5 o'clock, I just want to get home. I've got no interest in finishing off what I was doing. Even if it's something really important, and even if it's a Samsung video that I need to get done for next week, it will wait. Trust me, it will wait, because I want to get home and be with my son. That has changed me massively, because you realize what matters. And that is he is what matters. I mean, he's the reason I do all of this stuff, no question. But spending time with him is irreplaceable, and it only happens, every moment with him only happens once. So that is I've gone off on a complete tangent here, but in terms of me working all the time, I do less of that now because of my son, really, and I want to spend time with my girlfriend, obviously. Sorry, Jen, if you're watching, you know that. Mike, in the early days of Mark Ellis Reviews, what kind of money would you be spending to buy your own kit to review? Did you set specific limits? I spent quite a lot, to be honest, Mike. I still do, to a degree. Buying the new Samsung stuff, it wasn't cheap. Neither was buying a few Apple things as well recently. I didn't set limits, but I think, as I've mentioned previously, I went into this business with a decent, as I call it, war chest in the bank. So cash flow has always been very positive in this business. I've always had a decent amount of money available if I need to buy stuff. I never want to be in a position where a new Mac comes out, a new MacBook, let's say, comes out, and I can't afford to bring it in to review. That, for me, that would be as bad as running a manufacturing business and not being able to buy an essential new tool that if I don't buy, I'm going to lose production time and not get products out the door. It's that important. So every review unit that I bring into the business, I see as an investment in the content. They all pay pretty much, not all of them, but 98% of them pay me back very well over a certain period of time. Sometimes very quickly. Sometimes it might take 6 months, a year, whatever it is. But for that reason, I don't set specific or strict limits based on that, because I do have enough of a buffer, basically. Which one of my main pieces of advice for anyone who wants to go into this really seriously full time is to have decent money in the bank, because you will need it, particularly if you're going into tech. If you're going to create a YouTube channel about giving finance advice or something where you don't review physical products, it's different, obviously. But if you are reviewing physical products and you don't have I don't have any kind of relationship with Apple where I can just say, can I have an iPhone, please? And they send me it. I don't get sent to California. This comes back to the question I had a moment ago about getting early access to products. There's a limit to this. I couldn't buy every single tech product that comes out. If I'd bought every tech product I've reviewed over the last 2 years, my bank balance would look very different. The fact that I have managed to get these relationships with these brands has reduced that overhead. I hope that makes sense, Mike. Rob, hello, Rob. How do you think your productivity will dip once you've got your drum kit set up? I'm looking at the camera. I don't think I can swing it. I won't try and swing the camera around just in case I pull out the cable. It's there. It's my electronic drum kit is just there. For anyone who didn't see this Substack post last week, I've wanted to play the drums for most of my life, I think. But because they're such a noisy instrument, and it never the opportunity to do it relatively quietly or somewhere where it wouldn't annoy everyone else in the house never really presented itself. And then suddenly I had this studio, and it's been on my mind for a while, thinking it's only a matter of time until I buy a drum kit, which I think is always the case when you get a studio. And I did that last week. And joking aside, well, there's two reasons I've done it. One of them is because, like I say, I've always wanted to learn to play the drums. And secondly, because I think it's very good for the old brain. I think I was talking to my girlfriend about this last night, actually, that I love what I do. I love creating videos. I love writing. I love doing all this stuff. But it's the same thing. Even though you're talking about different things and you're reviewing different products, I'm doing different stuff on here, it's still the same stuff I'm making. It's video, it's written work. And you can get stale with that. And what I found in the past is that as soon as I widen or broaden my horizons a bit in terms of creativity, whether it be previously learning the piano or making music in my back bedroom, I've always found that somehow benefits what I do for a living, because it freshens me up. It takes me away from doing this stuff. And the purpose of having this drum kit in this studio, apart from the fact that I didn't want to annoy everyone at home with it, is that it's there, and every day I can spend 10 minutes practicing. And that's coming to Rob's question. That is the plan. I don't know if it's going to work out, but the plan is that every day I'm going to spend 10, 15 minutes. That's it, no more, practicing and working on proper, kind of techniques and stuff, and doing that consistently. Because again, coming back to that consistent word, I know this works with everything. I know it works with this business. I know it's worked in the past with, learning to play the keys. Everything I've done, everything we've all done probably, if you get good at something, it comes from practice and from consistency. And I want to apply that to the drums, and hopefully freshen my mind up a bit and just get me away from the camera and the keyboard every once in a while. So that's the plan. I'll report back on that if it actually works. I think it will. I hope, possibly. Another drink, bear with me. As an accounting firm owner, that approach to your business finances is music to my ears. Talking of music, that's good, because I'm not a finance accounting person. I'm terrible with numbers. I really respect people who can do it for a living and who enjoy doing it. My bookkeeper, bless her, she's lovely. She loves numbers, and she loves diving into Xero, the accounting software that we use, and doing stuff, matching things up. And I can't think of anything worse, personally. I know some people probably can't think of anything worse than sitting down and writing a 1,500 word blog post. I totally get that. I love doing that sort of stuff. But numbers, But that's great, Johan. I'm glad that I'm doing something right. I think that a lot of that comes from my experience running my own business previously, and also working as a director for another business. So I understand how businesses work. I understand that if you want to be successful and you don't want to worry about money, you have to focus on cash flow, and that's something that's always been top of mind for me. It's really, really important because I've seen other people not focus on it and get into trouble, and I just don't ever want to be in that position. Tectonic, hello, says, what would you say is currently the best tool slash service for building a mailing list? There are so many of these. It's a little bit like social media networks. There's just almost too many. They all do the same thing, really. The thing that matters with these platforms is their reputation um, uh, in terms of their email. What do they call it? The deliverability and that sort of stuff, because you rely on these platforms to send out emails en masse. If they have a bad score with ISPs and can't get the emails out for you, and I have experienced this with certain platforms, it ruins the whole thing. So that's the main thing with them, really. They all do the same thing, which is give the ability to create landing pages, to create email lists, and to get people's email addresses, basically. I mean, the ones that I use too. So I use SUBSTACK for Solo Club. As a quick reminder, the SUBSTACK newsletter list is down below if you want to sign up. That's very good. SUBSTACK is very much a newsletter platform, so it's a case of building an email list and sending them written stuff. You can do podcasts on it as well, and video and stuff, but it started life and is still primarily a written newsletter platform. It's very good though. I've been really impressed with it so far. The other one that I use for Mark Ellis reviews is ConvertKit, and ConvertKit is like MailChimp. All the other, I'm trying to think of the other ones, but there's so many of them, like I say. But ConvertKit is very good, very easy to use, very good sending reputation. I've never had any issues with it, really. I think it's well priced. So those two would get my vote. So I'd look at ConvertKit for a standard kind of email marketing tool. But if you're more interested in building a newsletter list, personally, I'd look at SUBSTACK. But that's only because that's the one that I've used. Check them all out. My teenage kid considers to start content creation. Where would you suggest to start this journey? That's such a great question. I mean, I think the easiest thing you can do with this, and it depends on your kid's age, but I suppose if they're in their teens, they're going to be a bit more worldly, I suppose, and kind of know what's going on. But equally, they're probably at that age where they're quite impressionable. And I'm 40. What am I? 43. I'm at that age now. I can't think how old I am. No, I'm 42, aren't I? I'm 42. There's quite a lot I've been through in my life, and as a result of that, I've got quite a thick skin. And the one thing I would say, there is a point to this, is that I think as a teenage kid who doesn't have possibly that thick skin because they don't have the life experience, I think you have to be a bit careful, and you have to make sure that they go into this knowing what they can expect. And you know what I'm referring to here. I'm referring to trolls. And the reason I'm talking about this straight away with this is because, unfortunately, they will experience that. It doesn't really matter what content they create, what niche they go for, what audience they're trying to build. They're going to experience idiots online, and I think thinking about myself as a teenager, young impressionable teenager with not much experience, some of the stuff that I see on my channel that's sent to me would really bother me then. So I think probably the first thing to do, as a parent personally, if Harrison ever says to me, I mean, when he's 15, 16, things will be very different. If he comes to me one day and says, look, Dad, I want to get into this content thing. I'd love to create a channel or whatever it is at that point. What should I do? The first thing I would do is just talk to him a little bit about the way it works socially, because you are opening yourself up for all sorts of things. And it's not a nice place at times. And I think particularly with younger people, it can get quite nasty. So I'm sorry to kind of bring it down immediately with that, but I'm just talking about this as a parent, really, and it bothers me quite a bit. So I think providing your your teenage kid is aware of that, and they're aware that they don't need to ignore those trolls. Just let them do their thing. What I would do is focus on probably not YouTube. I would just get them to use their phone. Create a TikTok account or an Instagram account possibly, and just make some videos. Just start really get used to talking to a phone, talking to a camera, which, let's be honest, they probably are already. They're ahead of us on all this stuff, aren't they? I don't even know why I'm saying this really. But I would just get them to ease themselves into it. Maybe just document what they're doing, pick a hobby that they like doing. I'd guess they've probably got an idea of what they want to talk about. But as with anything, as I found myself, that may not be the thing that they end up covering on their journey as a content creator. Waffling a bit now. I hope that made sense, but I would talk to them a little bit about the whole troll thing, because there's not much you can do to stop that. And as a parent, it does bother me. Rob, when are we going to hear more about the Mark Ellis Academy version 2.0 coming later this year? As soon as everything quietens down in terms of tech, which I know doesn't happen that often, and the window between the big tech releases gets shorter each time. But fairly soon, Rob, there'll be news relatively soon about that. Another one from Rob. Are there any plans for more Skillshare classes, or is it not worth your time? I note that MKBHD didn't bother after his first one. So Skillshare changed a lot of their kind of policies and the way that they share their revenue with teachers. I think they call creators on there. A little while ago, this was probably about 18 months ago. It was roughly about the same sort of time that I launched my first class on there. And basically, it resulted in teachers getting paid a lot less by Skillshare. They removed all sorts of things that they were doing previously. I think someone, for instance, Ali Abdal, he has spoken about this publicly, I think. It almost halved his revenue, I think, from Skillshare. I guess MKBHD may have found the same thing. He was probably he probably did fairly well out of that, but from his perspective, it was probably a bit of a trial just to see if it's worth his time. I don't think it is worth my time personally. I probably won't do another Skillshare class. I'd much rather put time into the academy, which is a direct way of working with people, and it cuts out that middleman basically. Because again, using Skillshare, it's not your audience. They can take it away at any time, and as they proved, they can change things financially, which can completely decimate your earnings. So I'd rather have a direct relationship, really. Mike, when you started as a content creator, how did you keep your motivation up to keep going if it ever dropped? Motivation, I just crack on with it, really, Mike, which I know is a bit of a useless answer. I'm not sure what you mean by if it ever dropped. I guess you mean, the way I would take that is that, if views dip, and this does happen, you go through fallow periods, whether it be for, you may publish 3 or 4 videos in a row that don't perform very well. That can be quite hard. Equally, you might go through, as I did after hitting the 100K on Mark Ellis reviews. I had the worst kind of couple of weeks in terms of audience growth I think I'd ever experienced. And when those kind of things happen, it is tricky. It's hard. It's very hard to kind of motivate yourself to carry on going. Not carry on going, but it gets you down. Let's put it that way. And that can impact the content you create. It certainly impacts your desire to put everything into it. But you have to take those moments with the really good moments when you publish a video and it goes off the charts, which it's 50-50 really. But in terms of keeping my motivation going, I think it's because I love doing this. I think if I found that I was walking into this studio each day and thinking, I just cannot be bothered to do this, at that point, I'd need to make changes. Again, it's that another Steve Jobs quote, which I'm always kind of referring to. But I think it was him who said, if you look into the mirror each morning and if you ask yourself the question, do I want to do what I'm about to do? If you answer no, I think his cutoff point was 2 or 3 times, you need to do something else. And I think if it got to that stage, then it would be an issue. But I just love doing this, Mike. So I think that gets me through those periods, definitely. On the subject of platforms changing the revenue share, what do you make of the recent changes to the Medium Partner Program? I genuinely don't know at the minute, Rob, until it comes into effect, which is in August, I think. So for those who aren't aware, Medium's going through lots of changes. They've completely changed the way they boost stories. I think I have spoken about this on previous live streams. I'll probably do a video on it, a live stream on it at some stage, possibly even a main video on it. But to cut a very long story short, it's Medium is now the way that it promotes stories is a mixture of your good old-fashioned algorithm and what they call boosting, which is run by human beings. So this is people recommending to Medium stories that should be boosted in the algorithm, and then Medium looking at those stories and saying yes or no. And that is human curation. There's no, as far as we're aware, there's no robotics involved, no AI involved at all. It's all human beings with their own brains judging whether a piece of content should be boosted. And if it is boosted, you get a serious uptick in views, which in turn gives you more money. It's more complicated than that, but that's the basics of it. They're also making some, and this is what Rob's referring to, I think. They're also making some fairly big changes to the way that the Medium Partner Program is distributing its funds, basically. And this all comes into effect in August, I think, so next month. And the key things with it, what they're trying to do, which I completely understand, they're trying to remove the possibility of, AI-driven content or just basically rubbish content. And there's a lot of that on Medium, unfortunately. There's a lot of stories about how to make money on Medium, all that stuff, which is just the same recycled things. And it's literally just people trying to make money from the partner program. What Medium's trying to do with these new rules around the Medium Partner Program is to stop those kind of stories from being from being rewarded for it, basically. So they're trying to build in this thing where they reward decent, well-written, genuine, not AI written stories, which is very, very admirable. I want to see how that impacts my earnings in August when it comes into effect, because I write those kind of stories. I don't use AI. I put a lot of passion into what I write, and I think for the right audience, it's good stuff. So in theory, if my earnings stay the same, they've dipped quite a lot on Medium, to be honest. If they stay the same, we're okay, possibly. If they increase, then they're onto something. So I reserve judgment, Rob, until they come into effect. But I will talk about that a bit more in a future live stream. I'm loving that you are scheduling these so far ahead and in batches. It makes it so easy to be notified on YouTube. Yeah, I'm glad that's useful. I don't do it, funny enough. My girlfriend does that. It's one of she does a few things now for this business, and that's one thing she does. Bless her. Every month, she schedules the live streams. So thank you, Jen. Not down to me at all, but I'm glad that's useful. Dell, I recognize that username. What's your favorite platform to promote your content? Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter? It depends what you mean by promote your content, because I don't really promote it. So when I publish a video on YouTube for Mark Ellis Reviews, for instance, I do share it on Twitter and I share it on Instagram, but I don't do that and expect to get a lot of incoming traffic from it. The reason for that is because most platforms like TikTok and Instagram, etc., they will bury content where you're putting links into it because they don't want people to go off their platform. So if you put a tweet out and you put a link in there, it will not perform because, understandably, Elon Musk would rather people stay on Twitter. There's a few workarounds with that. You can do a post and then have a reply. Do a thread. So you'd have a main post with no link in it, and then the second tweet within that thread has the link in it. That does work. The initial tweet does perform well as it should do, but then it relies on people then reading the thread. Long way of saying, basically, Dell 1032, that. I don't really use. I put those. I share those videos on the social networks, but I don't do it expecting anything really. It makes sense to put them on there if that's what you mean by promoting content. If you mean by using these platforms just to actually put the content on itself, that's a different thing. And I think out of those three, TikTok is my favorite. I never thought I'd say that ever, but my TikTok account is just doing fantastically, and I genuinely think it's got some value in terms of potential brand partnerships and potential sponsorships. And I have spoken to TikTok also about their TikTok shop, which is a way to earn affiliate revenue by recommending products and doing live streams and all that sort of stuff. So TikTok, I think, is really interesting. But I may have completely misunderstood your question, so apologies if I have. Do you think there is any relevance/value in carefully choosing your YouTube name/handle? Great question. I think it's important. I think, with hindsight, I would probably have not added the word reviews to Mark Ellis Reviews. I think I would just have had my name. I just think that's cleaner. I think it doesn't pigeonhole you too much, even though pigeonholing is a good thing on YouTube, obviously. I think it matters, but I don't think you should spend too long worrying about it or thinking about it. It's a little bit like naming a product or naming a company or coming up with a strap line or designing a logo. I've always been I worked for quite a long time in marketing and lost most of my hair in meetings where we talked about revision 36B of a logo. And I'm firmly of the opinion that it doesn't really matter, because at the end of the day, once it's picked, people forget about it. It just becomes the thing, and to a degree, that is the same with a YouTube channel. You just become known as whatever it is. Mark Ellis Reviews is just my YouTube channel name. I don't think about it really. It has occasionally caused issues where, and this is what I mean about being pigeonholed a little bit too tightly, where people think that every video that I make is a review, and that isn't always the case. It might be not demonstration. It might be an overview of something, or a kind of a tutorial, etc. I don't necessarily always make product reviews, but people think they are. So it's important, but I wouldn't waste or spend too much time on it. When is Jen going to make a cameo appearance, either in a main video vlog or maybe a solo club Q&A as a famous YouTuber wag? I don't know if she ever will, to be honest, Rob. I'd love her to. I think it'd be great to get her on. I just don't know if she would. I might try it one day. She's not shy at all, but as anyone on here who does this sort of stuff knows, and you know yourself, Rob, creating content is still a weird thing to do, and you still have to, kind of be aware. You still have to perform to a degree, and I guess that isn't really what she does. And maybe I'll get her on, maybe a Q&A, maybe a pre-recorded Q&A to take some of the kind of stress away from it. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I might work on it. Rob. I'll see what I can do. Have I missed any questions? Probably. Let's have a quick look. We've got a few more minutes, guys, if you want to hit me with anything else. Let's have a look. I don't think... Oh, here we go. Mike, why RoboForm over 1Password? I'll let you off, Mike. It is a tech question, but that's fine. RoboForm, 2 reasons for this. Well, no, is there 2 reasons? There's 1 reason, actually, and I'm more than happy to be honest about this. RoboForm is a great platform, by the way. I trust it implicitly. They're lovely people. This is a very important thing with these kind of password managers, obviously. Very much like 1Password, my relationship with RoboForm immediately was good, because they're just very nice people, and it's a platform that has been very trustworthy since it started. Never been hacked. It's very good. It's not quite as technically competent as 1Password. I think 1Password is probably still it's the top one for me in terms of all the features that it's got, but RoboForm is no less secure, I don't think, personally. There are a lot. I mean, we could really get into the weeds with this. There are lots of different questions, lots of different opinions on this, so we won't get too much into it. But the main reason I've done this is because I now have a partnership with them, a sponsor partnership with them on Mark Ellis Reviews. And the partnership I had with 1Password fizzled out, really. They I don't know what they did, but they made some changes in terms of the way they worked with creators and the kind of affiliate partnerships they have with people like myself, and it just kind of disappeared. And a lot of I have to be careful what I say here, but a lot of the people that I knew at 1Password either aren't there anymore or have vanished from Twitter and gone into Mastodon or something. I've just gone, really. And I have limited time to keep those partnerships going, and if another brand comes along and I like their product, that's the most important thing. The product works because I use these things every day. I rely on them. If that comes along and it looks good and they're happy to get involved and invest in my channel in terms of sponsorships, I'll take it on 100%. So that is why I'm now using RoboForm. I'm still partly using 1Password. Someone asked me this I think this morning on Discord, on my Discord server. Are you really changing to RoboForm? I am. The reason it's taken me so long is because I have 86 different machines and very limited time to swap over. So it's a case of slowly. But yeah, that's the reason. Alan, any thoughts on the Canon R50? I'm so out of touch with Canon, Alan. I used to be a Canon shooter many years ago. I've still got my 5D Mark III in the cupboard somewhere. I will never get rid of that because it was one of my first main full frame cameras. But I don't know anything about the R50. I'm afraid. Is that a recent release? I'm not entirely sure. You can ask me anything about Sony cameras. I'm a huge Sony fan and use their stuff very consistently in this business, but I'm afraid I don't know anything about the R50. The person to check out with that is definitely Peter McKinnon. He's a Canon person through and through and knows his stuff much more than I do. Awesome. Have we got any other questions, guys, before I sign off for the weekend? Although, again, I'm working a bit tomorrow because the life of a YouTuber. I'm just looking back at the questions to see if I've missed anything. I don't think I have. Oh, here we are. Another one. Sony. From Sony, are there any great second-hand starter cameras you'd recommend? Second-hand. Let's think about this. It depends on your budget, to be honest, Mike. It depends on how much you want to spend. The only downside with Sony is that they have so many cameras. They seem to release a new camera every week, and they're all fairly similar. So there's lots to choose from. It does depend on what you'd want to. Also, it depends on what kind of stuff you're shooting. If you're doing vlogging type stuff, I'd recommend in that case looking at the Sony ZV-1, which is what I use for a lot of vlogging stuff now and again. It hasn't got great battery life, but it's got very good image quality. The image stabilization is pretty good. So I think I'd consider the Sony ZV-1. If you're doing this kind of stuff, more static stuff in a studio or bedroom or wherever it is you're filming, secondhand, you can probably pick up an A7 III for fairly decent money these days. It's not the A7S III, which is the camera that every YouTuber, it seems, uses, or the FX3. But it's a very good stills camera, and I think, to be honest, it probably does a good job in terms of 4K video as well. So have a look at the A7 III. I think you can probably pick that up for fairly decent money these days. But yeah, it depends on what your budget is, really, Mike. Guys, I think we are there. It's been a good attendance today, and as always, some awesome questions. I hope the whole embargo stuff was interesting. It absolutely fascinates me, and hopefully, touch wood, this is the start of more and more of this stuff. So, as always, I will share as much of it as I can, and give you an insight into how this stuff works. But yeah, thanks, guys. I will return depending on when Jen has scheduled the next one. I think it's next Friday again at the same time next week. And as I mentioned at the start of this live stream, if you haven't checked out the Substack newsletter yet, click that link below. It's completely free. You can remove yourself from it if you don't enjoy the content. But every Friday, you will get an email from me along these lines. Alan's just said that MPB do good deals on the A7 III. There you go, sorted. And on that note, guys, I'm going to end this broadcast. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll catch you next week. Cheers.